1950s. Passing was still treated like a mistake waiting to happen in the 1950s. Most offenses ran on early downs, punted without hesitation, and accepted low scoring as normal. Receivers were hit immediately, routes were simple, and defensive backs were allowed to be physical well beyond today's limits. Yet one receiver completely broke that logic. Defenses knew where the ball was going and still could not stop it. Other stars like Tom Fears and Billy Houghton produced solid numbers, but none tilted coverage every snap. Halfway through the decade, Don Hutson stood alone. Hutson led the league in receiving yards 7 times and touchdowns 9 times during his career, including seasons where he outscored entire teams by himself. In 1952, he caught 17 touchdown passes when no other receiver reached double digits. His footwork, timing, and conditioning were years ahead of everyone else. Cornerbacks tried pressing him and got burned. Safeties shaded over and opened running lanes. Even late in his career, he posted a 1,211-yard season when the league average team barely reached that total. Critics point to era differences, but dominance is relative, and Hutson lapped the field. He didn't just lead receivers, he redefined what the position could be. By the end of the 1950s, defensive coordinators were forced to plan entire weeks around one man, something unheard of at the time. That shift began everything that followed. 1960s. The 1960s finally opened the door for receivers to become central weapons instead of accessories. Passing volume increased, quarterbacks gained more freedom, and speed began to matter more than brute force. Several players pushed the position forward, including Paul Warfield, Charlie Taylor, and Bobby Mitchell, all of whom stretched defenses vertically. But one receiver blended speed, route precision, and scoring better than anyone else. Halfway through the decade, Lance Alworth separated himself completely. Alworth averaged over 75 receiving yards per game across his career, a staggering number for that era. He led the league in receiving yards 3 times and touchdowns 3 times while terrorizing secondaries with deep routes that felt unstoppable. Defenses tried jamming him at the line and lost. They backed off and gave up explosive plays. In 1965, he posted 1,602 yards in a 14-game season, a record that stood for years. Alworth wasn't just fast, he was efficient, averaging over 18 yards per catch for his career. Warfield had championships, but Alworth had consistency. Taylor had toughness, but Alworth had separation. His impact forced defensive backs to prioritize speed over size for the first time. By the end of the 1960s, the league accepted that elite wide receivers could control games, not just complement them. Alworth made the vertical passing game respectable and dangerous at the same time. 1970s. The 1970s swung the pendulum back toward defense, punishing hits and physical coverage. The passing game survived, but only the toughest receivers thrived. Defenders could still redirect routes. Quarterbacks faced constant pressure, and yards came hard. Several stars carved out reputations, including Lynn Swann, John Stallworth, and Drew Pearson, all of whom delivered iconic moments. But consistency mattered more than highlights in this era. Halfway through the decade, Fred Biletnikoff became the standard. Biletnikoff never relied on speed. He relied on precision, hands, and leverage. He led the league in receptions twice and receiving yards once, despite playing in a run-first offense. In 1974, he caught 10 passes for 121 yards in the Super Bowl, earning MVP honors in a defensive slugfest. Swann dazzled, but Biletnikoff dominated week after week. Stallworth had explosive plays, but Biletnikoff moved chains relentlessly. Defensive backs knew what was coming and still couldn't stop it. His ability to find soft spots in coverage made him a quarterback's security blanket. By the late 1970s, coaches valued route running more than raw athleticism because of him. The league even named its top receiver award after him, a rare honor that speaks to lasting influence. In an era built to erase receivers, Biletnikoff endured 1980s. Offense exploded in the 1980s. Rule changes limited contact, passing volume increased, and receivers finally had space to operate. Stars emerged everywhere, including Steve Largent, Art Monk, and James Lofton, all producing massive seasons. But one receiver didn't just benefit from the era, he dominated it completely. Halfway through the decade, Jerry Rice redefined excellence. Rice led the league in receiving yards 6 times and touchdowns 5 times during the decade. In 1987, he caught 22 touchdown passes in a strike-shortened 12-game season, a pace that still feels unreal. Defenses doubled him and still failed. Press coverage didn't work. Zone coverage didn't work. His conditioning allowed him to outrun defenders late in games when legs were gone. Largent was reliable, but Rice was unstoppable. Monk was consistent, but Rice was surgical. Lofton was fast, but Rice was relentless. He won Super Bowls, hosted historic playoff performances, and made clutch catches in the biggest moments. By the end of the 1980s, the question wasn't who the best receiver was, but how long this level could possibly last. The answer would shock everyone in the next decade. 1990s. The 1990s pushed wide receivers into the spotlight as true game changers. Offenses spread out, passing volume increased, and stars were finally allowed to dominate weekly headlines. Defenses still hit hard, but rules slowly tilted toward offense. Elite talents emerged everywhere, including Michael Irvin's physical dominance, Chris Carter's unmatched hands, and Tim Brown's longevity. But one receiver separated himself with a level of consistency that felt unfair. Halfway through the decade, Jerry Rice somehow reached another level. From 1990 to 1999, Rice led the league in receiving yards 6 times and touchdowns 5 times. His 1995 season alone produced 122 catches, 1,848 yards, and 15 touchdowns, numbers that stood as a gold standard for years. He played through shortened seasons, rotating quarterbacks, and defensive game plans built entirely around stopping him. Irvin thrived in a dynasty, but Rice was the dynasty. Carter was clutch, but Rice overwhelmed. Brown was durable, but Rice was relentless. He delivered iconic postseason moments, including playoff games with over 180 receiving yards, and remained the focal point of every opponent's scouting report. Even as younger stars entered the league, he stayed ahead through conditioning and precision. The 1990s should have been the decline phase for most receivers of his age, but Rice refused that narrative. By the end of the decade, the debate wasn't about who ruled the 1990s. It was about whether anyone would ever match what had just happened. 2000s. The 2000s introduced chaos at wide receiver. Offensive systems diversified, quarterback play became volatile, and highlight plays exploded across television screens. Stars like Marvin Harrison, Terrell Owens, and Larry Fitzgerald built Hall of Fame resumes with consistency and production. But one receiver warped defensive rules entirely. Halfway through the decade, Randy Moss shattered expectations. Moss led the league in touchdown receptions 5 times during his career and posted a 23 touchdown season in 2007 alone. Defensive coordinators panicked, deploying double teams before the snap and still watching the ball sail overhead. Harrison was precise, but Moss was terrifying. Owens was powerful, but Moss was effortless. Fitzgerald was clutch, but Moss redefined vertical offense. His ability to score from anywhere on the field changed red zone strategy league-wide. Critics questioned effort and consistency, but his peaks were nuclear. Moss averaged over 15 yards per catch across his career and routinely turned broken plays into touchdowns. The moment he joined New England, the offense exploded into the highest scoring unit in league history. The 2000s rewarded explosiveness, and no receiver delivered fear faster. By the end of the decade, teams weren't asking how to stop him. They were asking how to survive him. 2010s. The 2010s became the era of receiver specialization. Route technicians, deep threats, slot weapons, and yards after catch monsters all flourished. Julio Jones dominated with size and speed, Calvin Johnson overwhelmed defenses briefly, and DeAndre Hopkins punished coverage with contested catches. But one receiver combined volume, efficiency, and separation better than anyone else. Halfway through the decade, Antonio Brown reached an absurd peak. From 2013 to 2018, Brown averaged over 114 receptions and 1,524 yards per season. He led the league in receptions twice and receiving yards twice while posting 6 straight seasons with at least 1,200 yards. Defensive backs knew the route tree and still couldn't stay with him. Jones had size, but Brown had precision. Hopkins had strength, but Brown had separation. Brown's footwork and body control turned routine slants into explosive gains. He delivered multiple 10-catch, 150-yard performances against elite defenses. Controversy later clouded perception, but his on-field dominance was undeniable. At his peak, he was uncoverable, regardless of coverage or situation. The 2000s demanded receivers who could win instantly, and Brown did it snap after snap. When the decade closed, the production gap spoke louder than reputation. No receiver touched his sustained peak. 2020s. The 2020s arrived with young quarterbacks, spread formations, and receivers expected to dominate immediately. Defenses adjusted with hybrid coverages, but offenses kept accelerating. Stars like Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, and CeeDee Lamb all made strong early cases, but one receiver exploded faster than anyone anticipated. Halfway through the decade, Jamar Chase changed expectations overnight. As a rookie, Chase posted 1,455 receiving yards and 13 touchdowns, including multiple 200-yard games. He followed that with postseason dominance, torching coverage en route to a Super Bowl appearance. Defensive backs played off and gave up yards. They pressed and got burned. His combination of strength, speed, and tracking ability made single coverage impossible. Jefferson was smooth, but Chase was violent after the catch. Hill was fast, but Chase was balanced. Lamb was reliable, but Chase was inevitable. He averaged over 18 yards per reception early in his career while maintaining elite touchdown production. Chemistry with his quarterback translated instantly to the NFL level, bypassing the usual adjustment period. Critics called it unsustainable, but the numbers kept stacking. The 2020s are still unfolding, but dominance doesn't need decades to reveal itself. Sometimes it announces itself immediately. Chase did exactly that. If you like this video, support the channel by hitting that subscribe button and watching this next video.